Good morning all once again. Let me start off with sharing the screen. Okay, before that, just a quick overview of the first eye, the second eye. The performance compared to the first eye in your second eye was not so good, though the question were asked was pretty straightforward. Few simple questions followed by the application of those questions. So if you have understanding of the concept, you can write your own program for that particular topic which has been asked. But I've seen in your answer script that a lot of people, let me share the question paper itself here. Yeah, a lot of people, though the question was asked to write your own program, they have copied the same program from the textbook, so that will not be accepted and you'll be losing marks for that. So those who have given an attempt to write their own program, of course, they'll be getting benefit for the marks associated to that question, right? So that is one mistake, one major mistake that I've seen a lot of you guys have done. Though it was clearly mentioned in the question that write your own Python program to whatever the question is, but a lot of people they have simply copied the same from the textbook, so that will not be accepted. And another mistake which I have repeated in the first after first I also that how much to be written for a particular question when a question is being asked. For example, let's say question number 1A. What is manipulating strings and explain any 5 useful string methods with an example. Right. So that carries around 10 marks. So you should evaluate yourself that how much has to be written for the definition of manipulating string, right? And how much to be written for the five useful method which has to be explained, right? So the question here, please read the questions properly. That see the question is what is manipulating string, so that can be hardly 2 or 3 lines of answer, right? So that will be probably for 2 to 3 marks. That's it. So remaining marks will be for the sub question which is there in the that question, that is explanation, right? In this case, explanation of the 5 useful methods with an example, right? So it is quite evident that this part of the question carries more weightage than the earlier, but still I have seen people who have explained manipulating string in detail, everything, working of those strings and so on. And when it comes to explaining the 5 useful methods, they have just written one liner, right? So that will not fetch marks associated to that question. So you should be in a position to self-evaluate how much worthy enough that particular question is to be written for how much answer has to be how much. So that evaluation you have to do yourself. Of course, the more the number of marks are allotted, the more content that you have to write, more better explanation, in-depth explanation, maybe with an example you are supposed to write. That's where those marks are placed there. But if you explain too much for a smaller question, you might, of course, you'll end up losing time for that, and of course, you'll be losing marks associated to that, right? So, not losing, but actually, you'll not be gaining anything. For example, what is manipulating strings, or let's say what is pattern matching? It is hardly again 2 to 3 lines of answer. So if you're simply explaining too much about that question, you will get maximum of 2 or 3 marks. Let's say maximum 3 marks. Right? For example, this question number 2A, if I split this 10 marks to uh, 3 plus 7, then what is pattern matching is for, let's say, for 3 marks, and writing the Python program to demonstrate the pattern matching text with the regular expression for 7 marks. So, in case if you are explaining too much, spending too much time for the explanation of what is just what is pattern matching, you will maximum get 3 marks, right? But you will be spending too much time on it and eventually end up leaving some questions. So that shouldn't be the case. You should, whenever you read a question, you should see the marks allocated to that question and also self-evaluate that how much I have to write for that question in order to gain sufficient marks from that, right? So that is second mistake that I have seen in the your performance. And apart from that, there are few students who tend to be act more smarter. They assume that we will not come to know the answer script which from where you have copied, or you know it is very simple to make it out. Let's not fool yourself. So I'll not talk much about it. You should be mature enough to understand these things, and eventually, if you are cheating yourself. That's it, right? You uh, have to write your final examination. You might try and attempt to cheat here, but final examination will be offline, and you have to be prepared from that perspective. So I don't have to explain these things to you. You are mature enough to understand that. But being said that, I just want to make you aware that whatever the attempts that you are trying, it is clearly visible, right? And don't try those. Don't harm yourself. Uh, with this, let us not get much into the IA. You will soon be getting the marks, what you have scored for the IA. But overall view for the second I is a lot of people have not performed better than what they have performed in the first I. So that is not a not a good sign that you are preparing well for this particular subject. Right. So with this, we shall move on to where we have stopped before I. That is, if I remember, we started off with the module 4, and we discussed few simple aspect introductory part of module 4. That is, we discussed what are classes and objects. If you can recall, right, we defined what is a class. We also discussed what is an object, right? How object is associated to a class. Then we went ahead to discuss the few topics, introductory topics in the module 4. Right. So let me open the book here. Yeah. So this is actually the second test book, which is named Think Python: How to Think Like a Computer Scientist. So this is the second edition of the book, and which I have already uploaded in the Google Classroom. Uh, you will be able to access it. The earlier version was the first version. In that, this chapter is there, but the chapter number is different. So you might not be able to find it, and there are few modifications compared to the first version of this book. So that's why we'll be taking the second version itself to discuss the topics here. Right. So from the previous class, let's have a recap of what we discussed in the previous class. That is classes and objects. As I said, we discussed what is a class. We again recalled what is an object, how an object is associated to a class, right? How do we create a class? How do we create an object? And then after that, we went ahead to discuss the types, right? The class types, the object types, and we also created our own type, right? If you can recall, we created our own programmer defined type called points, right? A point is nothing but two-dimensional representation with on a plane space or a plane or plane surface, that is which is having two coordinates, x coordinate and y coordinate. That's it, right? It's a two-dimensional representation. So why, what was the reason to create this type was to, let's say when we have a project wherein we are going to use this particular type, that is points, multiple times, many times, then we cannot go ahead and define every time. We cannot define this data type every time, right? So it is better to create one programmer defined type and then use it whenever we want it, right? So to create, what are the things that we saw? We first saw that what is the prerequisite for it. How do we represent a point, right? The x coordinate and the y coordinate. So 0 comma 0 represents a center or the origin of the point, right? And x represents the x unit to the right, and y represents units up from the origin, right? So that is x axis and y axis, you can say. So as I said, there are several ways to represent it, but one way that we adopted was to create a new type to represent this point as an object, right? And we named it as a class. This particular type, the programmer defined type, is also called a class. This is nothing but a class, right? So in this class called point, we are going to create a few more points which will be the objects of this class. So we saw that also, like how to create a class point and then uh, give some detail to it. Defining a class named point creates a class object, right? So here we have a point, and this is how we have created a class called point. Now, as I said, the class object is like a factory for creating objects, right? You yourself have given the answer that the object, the class is nothing but it is the collection of similar type of objects, right? And few of them said that object is nothing but the instance of the class, right? So both answers are correct, but the class as a whole, it is what it is like a factory of creating those objects. And to create a point, this two-dimensional point, we can call point as if we are calling a function, right? Where we can call this particular object point as if we are calling a function, like usually when we invoke a function. But just to give you an illusion, this is how calling of this object function would look like a function. So let's say we have this variable blank, and which is calling a function point, which is nothing but the object point. Right, so we saw these things, and also, like I said, that creating a new object, when we create a brand new object, it is called instantiation, right? Because we are creating and instantiating, we are assigning some value to it initially, and that object itself, it is called the instance of the class. So it is quite contradictory, right? The object is the, I mean, the class is the collection of similar types of object, but we say that the object is also an instance of a class. So instance and object, they both almost mean the same, and they can be used interchangeably. So whenever in this particular chapter, whenever we use instance, it is to indicate that that particular instance is the programmer created type, right? But otherwise we call it as object. But here in this chapter, we are going to represent instance as the our own self-defined type or programmer-defined type. Right. So in the previous class, we also saw the attributes, how we can assign attributes to a particular object of a class, right? And we saw the diagram, the object diagram for that. This is the object diagram. So let's say we have the variable blank, which has a point, and this point has some attribute values x and y, with values being 3.0 and 4.0 respectively. So that defines a point. Right. So with this, let us go ahead and start today's lecture with understanding, with better understanding of how can we make use of these points in a better way and in a more wider way, right? So one such problem or one such issue that we can address here is that how can we or what attributes would we should be using to specify the location as well as the size of the rectangle, right? So let's go ahead and kind of create a rectangle using this the programmer defined type that we have created called points, right? So but as you know that when we have a point, and in order to create a rectangle, we either should know the size of the rectangle and also the location or the center or the origin of that rectangle, right? So there can be two possibilities. One is to specify this center, which is nothing but a corner, you can say the corner of a rectangle, and or the center of the rectangle, either of the two, and then the width and the height of the rectangle. That is how much width that particular rectangle has and how much height it has. So that will define our rectangle. And another aspect, another possibility of drawing a rectangle is defining two corners. So when we have two corners, right, it will give us the exact size and the location of that triangle, right? So when you have two defined opposing corners, not any just two corner. For example, if I have to have a rectangle, let's say this is a rectangle, and I cannot just specify these two corners. I have to specify two opposite corners which can complete a rectangle, right? So To specify two opposing corners is one possibility. Another is to define the width, height, as well as the location, which is it can be a corner or it can be the center of the rectangle. So these are the two possibilities. Now let us go ahead with the first one, that is to define the corner of the rectangle, and then we will give the width as well as the height to the rectangle using this point. So how does our class definition would look like? Our class is nothing but the rectangle itself, right? So our class is rectangle. Let's name it as rectangle and put some multi-liner comments to make the programmer understand or make the viewer understand the what exactly this class is doing. So class rectangle represents a rectangle wherein it takes the attributes width, height, and the corner, right? So what are these width, height, and the corner is what we are going to see here. That is when we have to represent a triangle, we have to create an object, right, and also assign some values, which is nothing but instantiation of that particular object. Just now I mentioned, right, when we create an object, we also call it instantiation. So to represent a rectangle, we have to instantiate a rectangle object. Right? We have to instantiate a rectangle object. And once we instantiate, we have to assign some values or supply some values to the object so that we have some specific rectangle, a specific valued rectangle, and not just a random rectangle. So in order to do that, what first thing that we have to do is we have to call this class object, right? And how do we call a class object? Like I just mentioned a few time ago, we call a class object using how we usually used to call a function, how we usually used to invoke a function. So that's how exactly our this would look like. That let's say we have a variable called box, which is going to store the return values, right, of the object, right? So return value of the object, class object, will be stored in the variable box, and we have already discussed how does this return value would look like, right? So just for your reference, again, let me go back and show you how a return value of an object would look like. For example, we took a variable called blank here, which is nothing but a function, kind of function that we are trying to call. And when we try to output this variable blank, we can see there is some data getting printed here, right? Which is nothing but the name of the class object, which is main dot point, and followed by it object at something, some random variable characters you can see, right? So these are actually not random characters. These they do have a meaning. For example, if this particular set of characters is prefixed with 0x, that 0x means that this number is a hexadecimal number. So that means the value returned by the class object uh, is a hexadecimal value, and this hexadecimal value has been stored in a variable called blank. So why we are using this variable blank? In order to save the class object, the returned value of the class object, right? So similarly, when we create an object, class object called a class rectangle, right? The return value of this class object rectangle will be stored in the variable called box. So this variable named box will have that, it might be hexadecimal or it can be any specific format value, any object class object return value, but that whatever that value is will be stored in the variable called box. Now we whatever operation that we have to do, we can do using this returned value of this class object, right? And in order to do that, we have to make use of this class object and then the associated attributes with respect to that class object. For example, let's say this box is equal to rectangle, wherein we are calling the function rectangle, and then we are going to define the attributes. What are the attributes? The width, the height, as well as the corner. And how do we define the width? It can be simple assignment, right? For example, box dot width is equal to 100.0. So here we are supplying a floating point value 100.0 as a width and 200.0 as height. So it is clearly evident that this particular rectangle that we are trying to create here is it's a vertical rectangle, right? It is the a standing rectangle, you can say it's a vertical rectangle. So which has a 100, whatever unit that you want to assume, 100 as width and 200 as height. Now, having been defined the width as well as the height of the rectangle, now we have to this is nothing but the size, right? Width and the height is nothing but the size of the rectangle. Now we have to go ahead and define the location or the position of the rectangle. And to define the location or a position of a triangle, like I said, there can be two things that we need to define. That is, it can be either center or it can be the corner, right? So let us go ahead and create this rectangle or place this rectangle in a particular location with some specific corners. So in order to do that, the corners are nothing but points, right? Like I said, the corners are nothing but points. And in order to define those points, we have to call the class object called point, right? So since point, the object point is a part of the object rectangle, we need to we are going to make use of point as well, and we are going to instantiate the value for the objects of the point, right? So in order to do that, let's say again, we have to have the instruction box dot corner dot x and box dot corner dot y. Now what is this box dot corner dot x and box dot corner dot y? Box is nothing but it is the object, right? That is the object that we have created. And the corner is one of the attribute of this box, right? Like the other attributes, width and height, we have the corner as one attribute. And this value x and y, what are these? These are the object and the select the attribute of that particular class object, you can say. So it is the object attribute. It becomes the object attribute. So box is the object, corner is the attribute, and in that for that attribute we have the again uh, class object attribute, that is x, and another object attribute called y. So which is nothing but a specific value for these variables. You can have as many numbers of attributes for this corner, right? Box dot corner x, box dot corner y, and so on. So but right now we just need one corner with a specific value. So what is this corner? We are going to put this, we are going to give this value or initialize this corner x comma y. For that, this is the state object diagram. So which has the variable box. The box has the rectangle, the object rectangle, right, which is having the attributes width, height, and corner. Now the attribute width has value 100, attribute height has value 200, and corner is again a object called point, which has the value x, which has the attributes x and y with the value 0, 0.0 and 0, 0.0 again. So hope this diagram gives you clear association of how we have a class, how we have an object, how we have an attributes inside that object, and how do we have a values for those attributes inside that object, right? So the an object that is an attribute of another object is nothing but embedded, right? That's what we see here. Box dot corner dot x and box dot corner dot y. So this is an example of how an object that is an attribute of another object is called embedded. That is embedded, right? Okay, so let us go ahead and discuss the next aspect with respect to this rectangle. That is, how can we say that the instances as return values? How can we have instances, which is nothing but the object, right? Please keep this in mind. Whenever I say instances, instances and objects are interchangeable, but instances, we are making use of the term instances uh, for the programmer defined type, right? So whatever the programmer defined, that is, we have defined the type, those objects will be called as instances. Yeah, right. Otherwise, we normally usually refer it as objects. Right. So, but the question here is, how can we have these instances as return values? Can we have, number one question becomes that, can we have instances as return object, return values, right? So basically, what we are trying to do here, we are trying to expect a object or an instance in return, right? Object or an instance as a return value. So how can we do that? Functions can return instances, right? We have functions which return some values, which can return some object, which can return some instances. So functions can be handy here when we want instances as our return values. So let's say you are dealing with a problem wherein you want the a return value as an instance. It's better suggested that you create a function for it. Let's say, for example, we want to find a center for this rectangle. Whatever the rectangle that we have created, though we have defined the corner, right, for the rectangle, but let us go ahead and find the center for this rectangle. How do we find the center? Anything. Just in general, I'm asking this question. How do we find a center? Can anybody answer? How do we calculate a center, or how do we get a center of a particular geometrical figure? Yeah, anybody can answer this? It's a very simple question, like, how do you compute a center of any figure? We
Coordinates will be x by 2 comma y comma 2.
x by 2 comma y comma 2, exactly. So
Yes.
what we are trying to do is, we are trying to divide it. We are trying to find a midpoint. We are trying to exactly divide this dimension into half, so that we have the center, right? For example, if the length of the rectangle is 10, let's say the height of the rectangle is 10, and we are dividing it by 2, so that we get the midpoint. So midpoint is nothing but the center point, right? So in order to get the center of this particular rectangle, we are going to, like he said, we'll be going to divide the attribute values, that is nothing but the coordinates, by half. So in order to do that, let's create a function. Now this function will automatically create the center of a rectangle irrespective of whatever the length that you have given, right? So irrespective of whatever the shape of the rectangle is, that is vertically rectangle or a horizontal rectangle or a diagonal, anything, this particular function will be helping you to find the center of that rectangle. So in order to find the center, we have to make use of the object called point, right? Because we are going to calculate a point here. So let us create a variable called p, which will have the returned value, returned object value of the object called point, right? And by now you should be in a position to understand that this point is, which looks like a function, right? Point, open parenthesis and close parenthesis, which looks like a function. It is nothing but, that's how we call our program defined type, right? So this particular instruction here is going to call our object here, and whatever that returned object value will be stored in the variable p. Now with this p, we can do whatever computations that we want. What are computations? For example, like you said that we have to find the middle point, or divide the coordinates into half, so that we have the center. So what I'm going to do is, p dot x for the x coordinate. Let's say x is the width, rect triangle, that is rect dot corner dot x plus rect dot width divided by 2, right? So what I'm going to do is whatever my this corner are, my corners which are basically 0 comma 0 right now, right? I'll be adding the value, the width, the half of the width, right? So that gives me the center, exactly the center of the rectangle. So likewise, p dot y will be the rect dot corner dot y, which is 0 actually right now, plus rect dot height divided by 2. So that gives me the half of the height. So x will be the half of the width and y will be half of the height of the rectangle, which gives me the center of the rectangle. And then we are going to return p. So this is the simple function that we have seen, which can simply calculate a center associated to a particular geometrical figure. In this case, it is a rectangle, right? So how are we getting this return value as an instance? Whatever the value that we have passed here, the computation that we have done here, the object here, which is an attribute to another object, that value is returned. So in this case, it is the instance. It is not the object, but it's the instance which has been returned as value, right? So now this was just about a rectangle. Now, how can we have a similar function for, let's say, a normal, a more generalized uh, geometrical figure, let's say a box. So that box can be rectangle as well as it can be a square also. Right? So in that case, because this particular code here, this will work not just for the rectangle, but it will work for the square as well, right? So why not just generalize this program to write it for a box? That is finding a center for a box. Now again, let's say we have another variable called center. This is just a variable, and we are calling a function called find center, and the attribute that is the argument that we are going to pass here is the box. Now in this case, it is not a rectangle or it's not a square. It is more generalized geometrical figure, that is a box. Now we don't know whether this box is a rectangle or it's a square, right? It is the job of the function here to find whatever the center of this geometrical figure that we have given, right? So this is just a simple one-liner instruction here, that is print underscore point center, right? Center of what? 50 comma 100, which is the two coordinates that we have given. Let's say we have given the width as well as height of that particular figure. It can be a box, or it can be a, that is, it can be a square, it can be a triangle. But clearly this is not a square, right? The value is quite evident here that this particular value is, doesn't justify that this box is a square. It is actually a rectangle, right? So that's about the finding the center of a particular geometrical box using the instance of a class or the object. Now, one more aspect with the objects are objects can be changed, right? Objects are mutable in nature. How do we say that it's mutable? The state of that particular object can be changed, right? We can change the state of a particular object. How can we change this state of an object? By making an assignment to one of its attribute, right? So whatever the attributes that we have, for example, the attributes that we saw in the previous example, the width, the height, and the corner. When we try to make an assignment, by assignment I mean when we are assigning a value, we are using a single equal to symbol, right? Single equal to means assignment, double equal to means comparing, right? We are comparing the values for that, so equating the value. So here we are going to assign or initialize, or you can say just supply the value to one of its attribute, one of the object's attribute. Like we have box dot width is equal to box dot width plus 50. So we are changing the value here. We are changing the width here, and similarly box dot height is equal to box dot height plus 100. So what we are doing, we are changing the width of the box, the rectangle, and also we are changing the height of the rectangle. So this modification, this change in the object, which is nothing but the change in the state of the object, is the reason that why we still say that the objects are mutable, right? So simple example is this. This is just an example of how a rectangle can grow, like how we simple application. Just if I have to give you an example, let's say you have a rectangle. Uh, let's say you are creating a project wherein you are editing some tools, you are editing some videos, and you want to have a growing rectangle effect, right? You want to start with a small rectangle, maybe in a landscape, which is a horizontal rectangle, and that rectangle is slowly growing. So it's a kind of a small animation, right? So that let's say you want to have that animation in a particular video. So how do you go about that? You have to set up a function for that rectangle, right? Of course, you have to initialize a rectangle with some value, which will be usually a smaller rectangle in case if you are trying to create a bigger rectangle from a smaller triangle. That is growing a rectangle. So you have to start with a small rectangle, maybe a smaller value, and you have to set up a function that will be helping you to grow that rectangle. So it's kind of a loop, and of course you need to have a termination condition for that. So eventually you'll be starting off with a small rectangle, and when you invoke this grow rectangle function, that small rectangle will be growing, and eventually you'll be getting that animation effect. Right? That's how we can change that. That can be the best example that how can we say that the objects are mutable, right? Because what we are doing is we are actually changing the values of this object, right? So when we are able to change the value, we can say that objects are mutable. So here is that function that I'm talking, that is grow rectangle, which takes the rectangle as one of the argument, the width of the rectangle and the height of the rectangle, right? And as you can see, this instruction here, rect dot width plus equal to d width, and uh, rect dot height plus equal to d height. So this will be setting up in a loop. This will be every time will be incremented, and next time it comes, whenever again it will be incremented and incremented. So this is an example of a growing triangle. Similarly, you can have an inverse triangle or a shrinking triangle. For example, if let's say you want to uh, bring a animation effect wherein you are trying to uh, from a bigger rectangle you are trying to zoom it out to a smaller rectangle, right? So kind of a zoom out effect. So that can be an example of a shrinking rectangle, right? So that's how we can say that objects are mutable. That is nothing but the object, uh, the state of the object can be changed, right? Now, one of the other aspect with the objects is copying, right? Copying a particular object or making an alternate object or replicating an object, right? Which is also called aliasing. Now, aliasing, you can say copying. Copying isn't just an alternative aliasing, right? Basically, we are trying to create a duplicate object here. We're trying to create an object with the same value. But mind you that though we have created a copy of an object, these two objects will be different objects now, right? Just to give you a very simple example which you can relate to, it's like copying a folder, right? You create a new folder, you add some documents or whatever your files in that particular folder, but whenever you copy that whole directory or a folder and you create one more folder that is nothing but the same name, same folder, but though it is a copy, but they are two different folders now. Similarly, objects. Objects can be an alternative to aliasing, but though we have copied an object, whenever we have copied an object, after that they are two different objects, right? They might have the same value inside it, like how the folder can have same files inside it, but these objects can be different, right? So just to give you an example here, this copy module contains a function called copy that can duplicate an object, right? That will be duplicating any object. So let's say we have a point P1 calling the object class point, and we have the attributes p1.x and p1.y with the values 3.0 and 4.0, right? So x has 3.0, y has 4.0. Now this is one object that we have created. Let us go ahead and copy this object and create a duplicate object, right? So for in order to use this module, copy module, of course we have to import the module by using the command import copy, right? So that will give us uh, all these. We can use all the facility for the copy module whenever we want to do any kind of operation, right? For example, let's say we want to copy now. So let's create one more point p2, and we are going to call the name of the module, right? Copy dot the name of the method. The method is nothing but the function here, right? Which is again copy. So copy dot copy, and the point, the object that we have to copy as argument, which is p1. So the whole statement becomes p2 is equal to copy dot copy p1, right? Now p1 as well as p2 both contain the same data, right? Because it is just a replication, it is just a copy of that data. So this point p1 and the point p2, they both contain the same data, but the important point here is to notice is that they are not the same point anymore, right? Though they have this two, though they are copied from, like one is a copy of another, but now once we have copied it, they are no more the same point. They are two different points now. Like I give an example of a file and folder or a folder. Uh, the folder can have the same data as of its copy, but they will be treated as two different folders now, right? So though they have the same value, for example, let's say when you try to print it, underscore point p1, you get the value 3 comma 4, and whenever you try to print p2 also, print underscore point p2, you will get again 3 comma 4, because they both have the same value. But when you compare that p1 is p2, right? When you're trying to compare that whether p1 is equal to p2, the system will say false, right? Because they are not the same point. One point is a copy of another point. It has the same data, but it doesn't mean that they are the same point. They cannot be the same point. So that's why the comparison gives us as false. P1 is P2 is false. Right. So these are the very basic understanding of how classes and objects can we can make use of with here in Python. Right. So that should give you an understanding, like what is a class in Python, what is an object in Python, how can we make use of objects in the Python, how can we access attributes of the objects and do some kind of operations with it, right? So that should give you a clear idea. But still, if you have any doubt, you can ask any doubt if you have. Yeah, anybody, any doubt? If you have any specific doubt, you can ask. We can go to that slide again and discuss. Yeah, anybody, any doubt? Okay, it says no doubt. What about others? Okay. So if there are no doubts, then we shall conclude the lecture. Thanks for joining. We'll meet in the next lecture.